Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to talk about the movies. Welcome to episode 22 of The Movie Proposal. I'm Skye Jitani. With me is Josh Lindsay.
Hey, everybody.
And Jason Rugg.
Hey there.
We've got a whole new episode with new movies and old movies and something that blew our minds or blew chunks. So let's jump right in. Something old.
Something old. I'm going back to 1955.
All right. You're getting serious because I went back to the 1930s last time.
Yes.
So you're really diving.
Well, so I have three kids. Our youngest's name is Adelaide, and that comes from the movie Guys and Dolls, the musical. So Marlon Brando, Frank Sinatra. This week, my daughter, Adelaide, we call her Addie, asked about her name. And I said, oh, well, it comes from a song that Frank Sinatra sings. And I want to be clear, her name is not based on the character, it's based on the song. The character is kind of a ditz. But the song is very sweet.
I don't know the difference.
All right. So I played a YouTube clip on our TV, and my older daughter watched it with us, and they were really into it. And so I played another clip, and then I played another clip. And finally, we got to rent this movie. So we're going to rent this movie soon and watch it as a family. But it's
Guys and Dolls.
Guys and Dolls.
I've never seen it.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen it performed on stage?
I don't think so.
It's just a fun musical, love story, simple. It's not, deep or dark, or you don't have to think hard. It's just a sweet story about, guys who are doing things you're not supposed to be doing, and they fall in love with these girls, and they got to, get in the straight and narrow, and the music's fantastic.
So that sounds nice. Sounds like
it's pleasant.
Sounds like a 1950s movie.
It is, and the movie's got Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando, and I'm sure the female characters were famous. I don't know who they are, but
Gene Simmons.
Not the guy from Kiss.
No.
A different Gene Simmons.
Spelled differently.
Yeah. Okay.
But yes, check it out.
All right. Well, that's maybe the quintessential 1950s movie. Mm-hmm. I'm proposing the quintessential 1980s movie.
I'm going to guess, but I'm going to let you say. Go ahead.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So because there's something new, there's kind of an homage to this movie.
I'm glad you picked that movie because we're going to circle back around several times.
Yeah. I'd be shocked if people listening to this podcast have not seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, there are people who have not seen it.
I guess that's true. But
I've seen it.
You've seen it. Hey, congratulations! You've seen it. Yeah.
High
You live
five.
in Chicago. You gotta see it.
Matthew Broderick, kind of his big breakout role, although he had a couple of big hits in the 80s.
Project X.
War Games.
Oh, yeah, War Games.
But Ferris Bueller's Day Off it just captures that high school 80s suburban kind of life, and just a great fun movie. I remember we watched it with some of our kids, not all of them, and we had that problem that has occurred numerous times with 1980s movies
That are PG but not really PG.
Exactly. It's a whole different thing back then. There's so much innuendo and probably not kid-friendly humor,
Right.
but it's still a great movie. Pardon my phone call.
Can you take that call?
No.
All right.
I don't think so. I'll silence that. So there's the new movie we're going to review pays tribute in a lot of ways to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, although it's a superhero movie and everything. But it's hard to think of a movie from the 80s that has had more callbacks in advertising, in movies. There's just so many iconic moments in that story from
Have you seen the Domino's? Is it Domino's Pizza? Okay, so the kid, the tall, skinny kid, the boyfriend from Stranger Things with the big hair.
Yeah.
Okay, he's in a commercial. I believe it's for pizza, and I think it's Domino's. And they've got that music, bow, bow.
Yeah.
And so he is rushing home, running through people's yards, just like in that scene from Ferris Bueller. And I forget what happens. He's trying to meet the pizza delivery guy, or he's trying to deliver a pizza, one of the two. But he's breaking the fourth wall, and he's talking to the audience, and it's very. I mean, it is obviously from Ferris Bueller.
Right.
It's Domino's.
Domino's.
So anyway, there's certain movies that have a disproportionate impact on cultural vocabulary and visual vocabulary, and Bueller is one of those. And if you haven't, it's just a must. You have to. And when kids are old enough to engage the humor and not be freaked out by it, it's just you have to see it. That's like one of the handful of movies from the 1980s that I feel like you have to see, along with Raiders and E.T. and some of those.
Charlie Sheen, probably, if not his best, one of his best movies ever.
That's right. He's just in that one scene, right?
Right.
Oh, it's such a great film. Yeah. Okay. On to something new where we'll spend most of our time. We saw the new Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes.
And it's just been a long time. I was a little worried before we get into the proposals. I was a little worried about this movie, not because I thought it was going to be bad. I put my trust in Marvel that they're going to make really good movies. What worried me is there had been so much advertising and so many previews and so much marketing around this movie that I felt like I knew the entire movie before I went into
surprises.
it. Yeah, but it still managed to surprise, and I
did.
thoroughly enjoyed it. So, Josh, what's your proposal?
All right, I propose that Spider-Man: Homecoming has one of the best opening sequences ever, and that is a big deal.
Wow. Okay.
And so we can dive into more.
Ever, like not just for a Marvel movie.
One of yes. And I've got some comparisons we can make, but having.
Let's go in there a little bit.
Yeah. We'll get to it, but go ahead.
You want my proposal?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No,
well, mine's a little because I was thinking, Spider-Man's a great Marvel movie. So I wanted to do something like, as I thought more and more about the movie, I proposed that Spider-Man: Homecoming is a great metaphor for the millennial generation's addiction to technology.
Wow.
And I think this film, I know it sounds strange. I was looking for...
Jason just closed his computer over there while you...
No, we'll get into this a little bit, but I kind of put my pastor hat on for a second. I thought, if I was sitting with a bunch of teenagers who watch this movie, I think that would be the topic that I would want to dig into, or use this movie as a launch pad to dig into, and we can talk about that in a minute, but I'm kind of curious.
Well, this ties into it because, first of all, it is so important for a film to grab its audience. And there's even a rule in film school they teach. I don't know, Jason, if you know, like in the first 5 minutes or 7 minutes, you got to grab the audience.
It's just like a sermon.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And people remember the beginning and the end more than they do the middle and that sort of thing. Now obviously there's spoilers. So in the beginning of the film, they have the brief intro to the character, Michael Keaton's Vulture. But then they get into... they have the Marvel logo come up, and they jump into the film, and it says a Peter Parker film, and you get to see a movie made by Peter Parker on his cell phone.
Right.
Which is totally what a 15-year-old kid would do, who all of a sudden got incredible powers to climb walls and super strength and that kind of stuff. And it was so enjoyable. It was funny. You got to get to know this character in a matter of seconds and minutes. Mm-hmm. It was fun to see scenes from Civil War, the most recent, I guess.
Avengers movie. Yeah. Well, it's Captain America: Civil War, where Spider-Man was first introduced.
Right. And so you see scenes that you're familiar with from a different perspective. I was laughing, and I was totally surprised because first of all, it was a bad film. Like horrible, camera angles, just like saying stuff he shouldn't be saying while he's filming, And that's what made it so enjoyable, that it was about Peter Parker as a 15-year-old kid more than anything. And then so you knew you were strapped in and you were ready to have this ride. Now, as a comparison, so this is an easy punching bag, but Batman versus Superman.
Yes.
The opening sequence to that.
I don't even remember.
Okay, I'll tell you. So first of all, Spider-Man is the third... I guess you call it reboot, or it's the third iteration. In the first two, Tobey Maguire and
Andrew Garfield,
they retold the origin story, get bitten by a spider.
Right.
And in this third one, Homecoming, we're beyond that. And first of all, if you're watching Spider-Man, you know the origin story. And in case you don't, they do have a snippet of how he becomes Spider-Man. But we bypass all that, and it's all about Peter Parker and his character. Mm-hmm. In Batman versus Superman... It's the origin story. So mom and dad getting shot, and it's dramatic. And now, first of all, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't interesting. It's like, okay, we've seen this before. I heard these scenes were taken directly out of one of the comic books. I'm like, all right, there's nothing new here, nothing really interesting. Then we get in that scene where there's a funeral and he falls in the well, and the bats, and all of a sudden the bats start flying up, and all of a sudden Bruce Wayne starts lifting up with the bats, and that's where I'm sitting in a movie theater. I'm thinking, oh, this is why it's terrible. He's flying magically.
It was a dream, right?
Well, you didn't know that, though, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you go, oh, it's a dream. But by this point, you're like, okay, there's nothing interesting. Then I thought it was terrible. Then I'm like, okay, it's not terrible, it's a dream. Where are we going here? And it's just, you're on shaky ground, moment one. But in Homecoming, you're like, this is going to be fun. Same thing in like Indiana Jones. All the Indiana Jones movies have an opening sequence that are all about his character.
That's right.
Smart guy. He's good at what he does, but he makes a lot of mistakes.
Right.
He's winging it. And he fails, I think, every time. You know?
I mean, that's exactly it. What you see, not just in Spider-Man Homecoming, but in most of the Marvel movies, is they recognize everything has to serve the development of the character.
Right.
And what you see in the DC movies is it's just about action. I mean, Wonder Woman is the exception. I think they did a pretty good job there. But for the most part, it's just action, 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 and they fail in the character development. And what makes Spider-Man Homecoming so charming is that character element. And not just any character, but this is what really struck me about this Marvel movie, unlike any of the, 16 that came before it, is this is the first Marvel movie where the main character is somebody that the audience can totally identify with.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, most of the audience for these movies are teenage boys. Not that others don't like them or girls don't like them, but that's their core audience, and they put their audience on the screen. And by beginning with that self movie, it's an extended selfie basically, they completely identified with this generation. And my son, who's 12, is completely enamored with Spider-Man, and not just Spider-Man the character, but this movie, Tom Holland the actor, I mean everything. He's like completely bought into it, and I'm looking at him do that, and it reminds me of how I felt about Superman when I was in elementary school. Like, I just identified with that character as a kid, and I haven't seen him do this with any other Marvel character like he has with Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, and the other Spider-Mans I thought were actually pretty good. I was entertained by the first two Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire, but it was very, the theme behind it was with great responsibility, or great powers comes great responsibility. So it was heavy, and it's just this burden on this kid. Where in this movie, I mean, there's a flurry of, I want to have fun with this. Come on, give me a job. I want to do something. And then there's the girl, and he's very awkward. And what does he do at the dance? And all these things you can relate to, which I think made the movie fun and enjoyable.
The director said that they obviously they needed to make a superhero movie, but they really wanted it to be a high school movie. What was the director of?
John Hughes.
John Hughes. Yeah, they kept referencing John Hughes movies from the 80s and 90s as being the template. And there is a sequence in the middle of this movie of Spider-Man running through a bunch of backyards, and they actually show a clip of Ferris Bueller's Day Off in that scene through the backyard. So it was direct. Like, we're not even going to pretend we're not copying this movie. Right. They are. And so the high school dynamics, all that, it's you take out the superhero element, and it's still a good high school story.
And I thought they took up a notch too, where, because Marvel can laugh at itself. Mm-hmm. And so here's a kid who's been given unbelievable and amazing powers. And in previous films, he's always in downtown New York, so he can just fly through these buildings, and it's awesome. But when he's in the suburbs,
he's in Queens,
right? He can't latch on to anything, and he's stumbling. He's knocking tree houses over. He's crashing into fences, and he's running through a golf course because there's nothing on a golf course he can put his web on. And he literally says, "This sucks," right? Like this total teenager where it's like, in my mind, it's going to be amazing, but then when life happens, you're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be like at all, and which was so fun.
It was fantastic. I loved it. Okay.
So jump into yours, the whole Millennial.
Yeah, here's, like you point out at the beginning of the movie, they totally ground this character and this movie in the contemporary experience of teenagers with the smartphone and the selfies and the videos and all that. But the kind of the driving narrative of the movie is that Tony Stark has made this incredible Spider-Man suit for Peter Parker that has just incredible technology built into it. And with his friend Ned, they unlock even more of the technology of the suit because Tony Stark has put a training wheels protocol on it to kind of limit
baby steps,
right? Limit what Peter Parker's able to do with the technology of the suit, but they hack it, and suddenly he has access to a bazillion features on the suit, and it's really fun. Like, it's amazing what this suit will do.
That was a great idea of the producers. I thought.
But at one point, Tony Stark intervenes and says, "Look, you're out of control. I'm taking the suit away," and Peter says, "But I'm nothing without that suit," and Tony Stark says, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it.
Right.
And so the rest of the movie, he goes back to just wearing his sweatpant kind of homemade Spider-Man outfit, and it's all about him learning how to be Spider-Man without the crutches of this amazing technology all around him. So, I mean, this is a tangential application of the movie, but it struck me as this is a generation that really has completely integrated technology into their lives, and they think they can't do anything without it.
Right.
They think they can't have friendships without it. They can't have a social life without it. They can't exist without it. I mean, it is an appendage, right, to take away their phones, their smartphones.
Self-esteem is built around it.
Yeah, their whole identity is built around these phones. And I mean, part of what I would love to say to my own kids or to this generation is, look, if you're not enough without this technology, you're not going to be enough with it.
Right.
Like, you need to learn how to live life and how to have relationships apart from this technology.
Yeah.
And once you get those basics, then you can have it back. And that's what happens in the movie. By the end, he gets the suit back, but it's because he's learned how to be responsible and who he is without the technology. And I'm like, what better message could there be for this generation that really has no frame of reference without this technology? And again, this isn't explicit in the film at all, but I think it's a great launch pad to talk about that with your kids or with your community or young people. And I think if more young people put boundaries on these devices and didn't engage them, they would actually discover things about themselves they didn't know. Like, I can actually engage socially with adults and not have to retreat to my phone.
Right.
And the most recent Phil Vischer podcast, which I was not a part of because I was on vacation, they interviewed Andy Crouch. Did you listen to that?
I was just going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You got to go back and listen to that podcast. Andy wrote a book about I think it's called The Tech Wise Family, about all this research on technology. And he references Sherry Turkle, who is one of my favorite writers on the topic. She's a researcher at MIT, done a ton of research on the impact of technology on society and relationships and community. And Andy referenced the 7-minute rule. Did you remember that part?
Go over it again.
So basically they found, and they've done lab studies to prove this is a real phenomenon, that when two people meet or two people are in a conversation, they hit a lull around 7 minutes. Mm-hmm. And at the 7-minute mark, either the conversation ends or somebody takes a risk.
Right, they have to ask a question or
something. Right, so for the first 7 minutes, there's enough small talk that the weather, the sports, the different things going on, that there's no real depth to the conversation. But around 7 minutes, you either give up on the conversation or somebody risks by asking a deeper probing question or
offers up information.
Or offers something a little vulnerable about themselves, and then it takes the whole engagement to a deeper level. And they found that happens every time around the 7-minute mark, unless one or both of the participants has a cell phone.
Right, they take it out before 7 minutes.
Right, they take it out before or at the 7-minute mark and distract themselves with it, and then the conversation never goes deeper, which means there is this governor, this inhibitor on deepening meaningful connection with others.
Right.
And yeah, going back to Spider-Man, it's like, okay, the technology is phenomenal, nobody's denying that, and it can be a really great tool, but it can't be a substitute for self-awareness and deep, meaningful relationship and an idea of who you are in the midst of community. And so I found the whole dynamic of this movie really intriguing on that level.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been having some of those conversations with my kids who also saw the movie, and it might be worth others kind of.
Well, we've talked about this before, but I mentioned, I have a friend who has teenagers, and when the teenagers get in trouble, one of the things they do is take away their phones.
Right.
And he says within hours or maybe by the next day, that child is a different person.
Mm-hmm.
They're pleasant. They seem less stressed.
Yep.
They seem happier. And in some cases, I think one of them have even mentioned that they even feel better just not having been around that device. But it had to be forcefully,
right.
Taken away from them for some reason. And but yeah, I broke my phone and I finally turned it in to get it fixed. And it was weird being without it. It was just an indication on how dependent upon I am on my phone. So I don't think I'm that different from a teenager. So
yeah, that's part of the problem is we have no moral authority.
Right.
Because we're no different. It reminds me of a story. This woman brought her child to Mahatma Gandhi because her child was eating too much sugar, and she brought him to Gandhi and said, "Tell my son, he'll listen to you. Tell my son to stop eating so much sugar." And Gandhi said, "Bring him back in a week." So she left, and she comes back a week later with her son, and Gandhi says to him, "Son, you need to stop eating so much sugar and listen to your mother." And the mother thanked him and then said, "Well, why couldn't you have told him that last week?" And he said, "Because last week I was still eating too much sugar."
That's good.
So anyway, we do have to model, the boundaries and proper engagement with these things. And that's where the Tony Stark, Peter Parker relationship is a fascinating one because, from previous movies that Tony has his own daddy issues. and yet he steps in as a father figure for Peter
Right.
Parker, who has no father.
He literally says, the adult is talking.
Right, yeah. So I think that relationship could be a metaphor for our generation trying to father or parent our kids' generations around this technology issue. Like, we're not going to tell you can't have it. In fact, we're going to give it to you, but you need to show maturity and responsibility, and when you don't, we're going to take it away because there are more important things to develop than how to use these devices.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Best Marvel movie ever? What's your favorite?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Because of the convergence of these different elements, the John Hughes high school-esque kind of movie, the charming Peter Parker character, the wonderful interplay of great character development. And this is one of the few Marvel villains that I thought was pretty well developed as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, not great, but pretty well developed. And that fantastic, brilliant use of humor.
Yeah.
It was just great. It's hard not to... I mean, it's way up there. I can't think of all the Marvel movies right now, but it's way, way up there.
It's definitely a top 3 in my opinion.
Yeah.
I can't order them, but yeah, I loved it. And Jason, you said it was your favorite, right?
I've only seen it in theaters 3 times.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Do you have anything you want to add to it then? Because you're the expert.
It's real good.
All right.
See it.
Something borrowed.
Okay, so I didn't share this with you because I figured you wouldn't have read it anyway. That's okay.
I would have been busy.
All right. This is from NPR's article. Director John Hughes was a philosopher of puberty. So he died in 2009 when he was 59 years old, and so they wrote this article after he died, and so we already mentioned, there's. I mean, even before, early on, I had heard the Spider. This is the John Hughes of superhero films, right? And obviously they reference Ferris Bueller and so on. But in the article, here's a quote. It says, now this is written 7 years ago, I guess. So 8 or 9 years ago. The idea of a kid somehow almost magically empowered to do whatever he wants seemed to resonate with Hughes. And which is really, I mean, like, that's what happened.
Ferris Bueller.
That's what happened to Home Alone. Forgot his name. And then Kevin. And then Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it was great that they tapped in to that vein of the John Hughes-esque films. And so I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite? Well, I guess it'd be Ferris Bueller's. I didn't know you were gonna bring up that.
Ferris Bueller's way up there. Breakfast Club, wasn't that one of his?
Yeah, the top 3 is probably most famous are Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and 16 Candles.
Yeah, I mean, this is not it is a high school movie. But Uncle Buck.
Yep, he did that one.
He did that one.
Well, there were kids in that one.
Yeah, but there was a high school girl,
Yeah.
which is kind of the heart of the movie. Is Uncle Buck intervening because she's going down a dark path in high school,
Okay.
and they have the conflict and anyway, but yeah, I can't think of a John Hughes movie I don't like.
Well, there are plenty of them.
Are there? I'm sure there are. There are probably ones I've never seen.
Well, he did the Vacation series, and so he did all the sequels that went along with it.
Oh, okay.
He did all the Beethovens, all the Home Alones,
Those are
except for
things
probably.
he wrote.
What's
He only
that?
directed 8 movies. He wrote a lot more.
He wrote, yes.
But,
Okay.
Yeah.
He also directed Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh,
Yes.
that's one of my all-time
Yeah.
favorites. We've talked about that before. That's my favorite Thanksgiving movie. Weird Science.
Yeah.
Oh man, and all these movies are so great, and I remember watching them as a kid, and they're so completely inappropriate.
Right. Well, Weird Science is a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Totally, probably PG, and it's totally inappropriate.
Right.
But that's the one with Bill Paxton as Chet.
Yes, when he turns him into a giant pile of poop.
Yeah,
at
he
the
has
end of
to apologize.
Yes.
Classic scenes.
Yes.
So in high school, who were you? So let's look at the Breakfast Club. Were you
Oh man,
the
I don't know.
nerd, the jock, the rebel?
I was
recluse?
definitely not the jock. I was not the rebel.
Were you the recluse or the nerd?
I was the nerd. I was more the nerd.
Yeah, me too.
Well, here we are on a podcast talking about movies.
Superhero movies.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yeah, we've come far.
All right. So that was from NPR. So you're going to check that out. It's back in 2009. But you want to shift to something blue?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah, I had something that blew chunks.
All right.
Until
Uh-oh.
I saw this trailer, and I'm like, I have to talk about this. So I will give a a shout out to Blue Chunks, the Emoji Movie trailer.
Okay, I haven't seen the trailer.
Like it's the same story of like, I'm not like my mom and dad. I want to be different. Like, no, son, you're supposed to be just like us. And it's Rudy all over again. It's Wreck-It Ralph all over
So
again.
it's a paint by numbers kind of.
And maybe it's different. I haven't seen the movie, but the trailer spells it out. But anyway, the thing that blew my mind was the trailer, the first teaser trailer for The Disaster Artist.
I never heard of it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we talked about this. Okay, so there is a movie called The Room, which is made by Tommy Wiseau. Is that how you say his name?
Wiseau, yeah.
Wiseau, which is known as the Citizen Kane of bad movies. So
Okay.
this is it's infamous. It's got a cult following for how terrible this movie is. And this guy, I don't know where.
I think you mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, he's
okay.
got long black hair, and I mean the quality of the film is terrible. The acting is terrible. The screenplay, I mean everything about it is terrible. I've never actually seen the movie from start to finish, but I've seen many clips which are hilarious because they're so bad.
Not intentionally hilarious.
Not intentionally bad. And then I've seen, YouTube videos talking about this guy and this film and the popularity of it. Because I think it screened in one theater for one night, but then eventually got this cult following. Well, the guy who co-starred in it wrote a book called The Disaster Artist, which is apparently the story of making the movie is even crazier than the movie itself. So James Franco stars as Tommy Wiseau in the making of The Room, which is based on the book The Disaster Artist, the story of it. And so they show this scene where they do take after take after take because he's so terrible. He has no idea how to act. And when he finally
remember
gets
his lines.
Right. He won't remember his lines. And after like the 60th take, everyone's just so frustrated. He finally gets the lines right. They just celebrate. And it's a terrible scene, but he finally got the lines right. So they used it, right? I watch it over and over. And it would help if you knew more about this movie, but I cannot wait. And there's already, and this is probably made up, but there's already Oscar buzz for James Franco in this movie. I can't wait.
So it's a great movie about a terrible movie.
Yes.
Or potentially great movie about a terrible movie. It's very meta. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to double up too.
All right.
I'm going to do a Blue Chunks and blew my mind. First Blue Chunks. So last weekend, I think it was the big D23 Expo.
The Disney?
It's a Disney fan convention.
Where's the 23 come from?
1923 was when Walt came to Hollywood. So they call it D23.
All right.
Lots of interesting things came out of that, just news-wise. But one of the things that caught my attention is they laid out a timeline for all the upcoming movies that Disney will be releasing for the next like
all Disney
two,
movies.
3, yeah, like all Disney movies, right? So I'm not going to get into huge detail. I'm not going to tell you when, but here's the lineup, and some of them we know are coming: Thor: Ragnarok, the new Star Wars Episode 8, Coco, from Pixar, which is about like the Day of the Dead, kind of a Mexican thing. Black Panther, Avengers: Infinity War, A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, I saw that trailer.
The Han Solo movie, Incredibles 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Wreck-It Ralph 2, Mary Poppins Returns, Captain Marvel, Dumbo, which is a live-action remake that Tim Burton is doing.
Do we know who's starring in that?
No,
Yeah,
Will
we
Smith
do.
dropped out.
Who dropped out?
Will Smith.
Will
was gonna
Smith
be in
dropped
it.
out, but they do have they have announced it. The other Avengers movie,
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton is in it. Toy Story 4, The Lion King
Remake.
a live-action remake, which I forget that they've announced some of that cast too.
James Earl Jones is in that
Yeah,
one.
Frozen 2, and Mulan live-action remake, and there's one down here.
Oh, go ahead.
And then the Star Wars Episode 9.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, of all those movies, I think there's only 2.
Coco?
Well, to be fair, to be truly original, there's only one truly original movie in that entire lineup.
Is it Coco?
It's Coco. That's it.
What was the other one you were going to reference?
I was going to say Wrinkle in Time. I mean, it's based on a book, an existing work.
Yeah,
Which
okay.
is fine. It's original movie. I appreciate
yeah.
it, but it's kind of half because it's an existing prior creative work.
Yeah, I think they made a movie of it too.
They may have, but
Years
really,
ago.
I mean, and I'm sure some of these movies are going to be phenomenal, and we're going to review some of them on this podcast. I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but my heart kind of broke a little bit as I blew chunks because
this is the blue chunk.
This is the blue chunk section because it reinforces just how there is such a lack of originality. And you just listed all those John Hughes films from the 80s. They were all completely original movies.
Right.
And they were fantastic. And part of me grieves that we just, the industry and the economy of these things, everything has to be a $200 million recreation of an existing property or a sequel. Oh, I think I missed it. Did I say Toy Story 4?
Yeah, you said it, yeah.
That should not happen. There was no need for that to happen.
But they came up with a really great idea.
I don't know.
John Lasseter said so.
I'm just, this is bothering me. It's just bothering me a lot.
I'm torn because half of me, when I hear those names, I'm like, oh, I cannot wait.
I know. I feel that way too. But I grieve the fact that we aren't developing. I mean, what happened? Are we going to be someday at Toy Story 8? And are we going to see? I mean, what happens when Disney runs out of animated films they can recreate as live action? Do they then do updates on those?
Well, they go back to the 2D animation.
I don't know. It's just like we're going back to vinyl records. We're going to go back to old school hand-drawn animation. Okay, so that's what blew chunks. Here's what blew my mind. 2 weekends ago, I was in New York City with Amanda, my wife, and we saw the Hamilton musical.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So jealous.
So I read the whole biography of Hamilton by Ron Chernow, which Lin-Manuel, what's his name, wrote the whole musical around. Mm-hmm. So I knew his biography like super. And Hamilton is just this like stranger than fiction kind of character, like his life story. But the musical, I mean, everyone loves it. It's a big deal. I feel like I'm just jumping on the bandwagon, but it really is that good. And if you can't get to the musical, which few people can because tickets are so hard to get, just get the album. Like, listen to the album.
Oh, okay.
It's so worth it. If you know anything about American history, I mean, it does a phenomenal job of getting into really obscure facts that a lot of people don't realize. It's so brilliantly done. Like, it's one of those things you come away from and you go, like, we are truly made in the image of God. Like, that human beings are this creative and came up with this.
Yeah.
It's just so well done and brilliantly told. And it made me like proud to be a human.
Well, we live in. Wow, that really did blow your mind.
It did. It blew my mind.
All right. Well, we live in Chicagoland area, and so what my wife and I are doing is when on nights we know that we're free, there's a lottery.
Yeah.
So you can send in your email, whatever, and then like tickets are $10, but you got to win the lottery. So,
yeah.
So we're. That's our method to try and see Hamlet.
Well, I did. The only reason I was able to do it is I have a cousin who lives in New York, and he had connections, and he got us the tickets, which was incredibly kind.
So if any listeners out there have connections.
So okay, well that wraps up our episode this week. Tell us what you thought of Spider-Man. If you think it was the greatest opening of a movie ever, or if you saw any of the technology applications that I brought out. What John Hughes film is your favorite? I'd be curious to know some of that. You can get us on Facebook, my Facebook page, or Josh's Facebook page, I assume.
Yep.
Hey, my new book, What's Wrong with Religion, is still out and available. We're rebuilding my website, so it's been kind of wonky in our ability to market that book right now. But super excited to get that in the hands of people. You can get it on Amazon. The the Kindle version is now available, and you can get bulk orders at what'swrongwithreligion.com. Josh, anything you need to push?
No, I was just going to say, go see Dunkirk. It's out now, and that's probably the film we're talking about next.
Cool. All right. Thanks for watching. You can kiss this episode goodbye.
Drugs?
Thank you. No, I'm straight.
I meant, are you in here for drugs?
Why are you here?
Drugs.